Right up until the moment of his death, the man could not believe that it was not enemy swordsmanship that killed him, but a carefully orchestrated political betrayal. He was once the sharpest blade in the Pope's army, the last guardian of the tomb of classical chivalry, yet he ultimately fell before the cold artillery of a new era. When that German-made cannonball shattered his knee, what fractured was not merely a leg, but the faith of an entire age. The story takes place in the harsh winter of 1526, where the air of the Apennine Peninsula was thick with the scent of gunpowder and blood. It was a chaotic era where the old order was collapsing and the new order had not yet been established. Charles V, the Holy Roman Emperor, cast his greedy gaze upon Italy in his struggle for European hegemony. He dispatched a massive army composed of 18,000 infantrymen to cross the Alps and march toward Rome. The commander of this army was Georg von Frundsberg, a fanatical Lutheran who vowed to hang the Pope like a common bandit in St. Peter's Square. Facing this surging black tide, the Roman Curia appeared to be in imminent peril. Pope Clement VII held few cards in his hand, and the strongest trump card among them was the 28-year-old Giovanni De Medici. This young commander, born of noble lineage, led his elite cavalry known as the Black Bands to become the final line of defense halting the German army's southward advance. Giovanni de' Medici was unlike those mercenary captains who only cared for coin. The blood of ancient Roman warriors flowed through his veins. He revered honor and faced death with defiance. To conceal their movements during night raids, he ordered the armor of all his soldiers to be blackened. Thus, this phantom-like force earned its name and became an inescapable nightmare for the German army. However, war has never been solely about slaughter on the battlefield. It is, more often than not, about the dirty deals made behind the curtain. Just as Giovanni de' Medici was fighting a bloody battle on the front lines, a massive web of conspiracy was quietly being spun behind his back. Alfonso d'Este, the Duke of Ferrara, a cunning old political operator, appeared respectful to the Pope on the surface, but in secret he had long since colluded with the German emperor. On the chilly banks of the River Po, a vessel laden with cargo was sailing slowly under the cover of night. The ship carried not ordinary supplies, but the most advanced military technology of the time, 4 newly cast falconets. Duke Alfonso d'Este secretly sent these deadly weapons as a gift to the German camp, intending to kill with a borrowed knife and remove Giovanni de' Medici, a thorn in his side. He even wrote hypocritically in a letter that this was in celebration of a marriage alliance between their families, when in reality, it was a betrayal cast in gold and steel. Meanwhile, Federico Gonzaga, the Marquis of Mantua, was playing the same game. As an ally of the papal army, he should have fully supported Giovanni de' Medici, but he was a fence-sitter through and through. In order to play both sides, he feigned a leg injury, hiding within his castle and refusing to take the field. The situation at the front grew increasingly dire. The German army, leveraging their numerical superiority, was inching closer to the Po River defense line. Although Giovanni de' Medici's troops were brave, they faced severe supply shortages. The soldiers received only half their pay, and in this freezing winter, they did not even have sufficient clothing to keep warm. In stark contrast, although the German army was also a motley crew, they possessed a clear objective: to sack Rome and plunder the wealth the Church had amassed over a millennium. Giovanni de' Medici was not a man of all brawn and no brains. He knew he was outnumbered and that he absolutely could not engage the German pike squares head-on in the open plains. Thus, he devised a bold plan. Using the cover of heavy fog, he would lead his black bands to harass the German supply lines. To implement this plan, Giovanni de' Medici wrote an earnest letter to the Duke of Urbino, the commander-in-chief of the papal forces.
In campo aperto delle schiere alemanne non dispongono di artiglieria. E sia piuttosto conveniente.
In the letter, he stated bluntly that without equipping his troops with artillery, relying solely on cavalry to charge the German pike formations would be tantamount to suicide. However, the letter went unanswered, like a stone dropped into the ocean. The Duke of Urbino, also a calculating politician, envied Giovanni de' Medici's reputation and was unwilling to take risks for a reckless young man. During those most difficult days, Giovanni de' Medici and his soldiers were like a band of abandoned orphans. Late one night, amidst thick fog and extremely low visibility, Giovanni de' Medici led his troops in pursuit of the Germans to the walls of Mantua. The soldiers were cold and hungry, in desperate need of entering the city to rest and recover.
Apri questo porto! Traditori della Chiesa!
The scene was filled with irony. The warriors bleeding to defend this land were barred from entry by the land's very masters. Left with no choice, the illustrious black bands were forced to camp out in the frozen wilderness. To keep warm, the soldiers were compelled to cut down a roadside crucifix of Jesus, chopping it into firewood to kindle a flame. Watching the sacred image burn in the flames, a glimmer of desolation flashed through Giovanni de' Medici's eyes. It was in that moment that Giovanni De Medici realized he was fighting not only the Germans but the entire corrupt Italian political system.
Se tardano ancora le paghe da Roma, cosa raccontiamo agli uomini? Se tardano ancora le paghe da Roma, vin caldo contro la guazza della notte?
Anche a Roma lo sanno ben loro, che le benedizioni senza le armi non vincono le guerre.
Despite suffering such unjust treatment, Giovanni De Medici still did not give up. Scouts reported that the German army was moving toward Bagnolo San Vito, attempting to cross the Po River at that location. Giovanni De Medici knew this was his last chance. If the Germans crossed the river successfully, the gates to Rome would be thrown wide open. At this time, Giovanni De Medici did not know that Georg von Frundsberg had already received those 4 deadly falconets and had long since laid a trap at the crossing. The German army intentionally left traces of their march to lure Giovanni De Medici into the bait.
Sulla riva del Po presso Mantova, in luogo appartato, il comandante generale Frundsberg ha rilevato i 4 nuovi pezzi di artiglieria donati in segreto da Alfonso d'Este e di poi il tedesco, confidando di sorprendere i pontifici con la potenza del cannone.
The moment of the final battle finally arrived. It was a gray morning, with snowflakes falling amidst the rain. Giovanni De Medici led his elite cavalry like a bolt of black lightning, piercing through the white mist. They soon spotted the German rearguard. Giovanni De Medici took the lead, shouting, "Charge!" as he plunged into the enemy ranks. At first, the battle seemed to unfold exactly as he had predicted. The German vanguard began to crumble under the impact of the black bands. However, this was merely an illusion. Just as Giovanni De Medici prepared to press his advantage, the German pikemen suddenly parted to the sides, revealing the hideous face hidden behind the formation, 4 gaping black cannon muzzles. Without the slightest warning, and accompanied by deafening roars, fire instantly engulfed everything in its path. This was not a duel between knights. This was an industrial-age slaughter. A high-velocity cannonball whistled through the air, striking Giovanni De Medici's right leg with brutal precision. Time on the battlefield seemed to freeze in that instant. The wounded Giovanni De Medici was urgently transported to Mantua.
Il signor generale della Rovere informa Vostra Signoria che ancora non l'hanno portato al suo alloggiamento. Quel che si sa di certo è che è stato colpito scaramuzzando coi lanzichenecchi del Frundsberg.
He was taken in at the residence of Aloisio Gonzaga, part of the territory of the Marquis of Mantua's family, the very people who had previously shut him out. Hearing the news, Marquis Federico Gonzaga and the Duke of Urbino arrived to visit him. Their faces were plastered with hypocritical concern, as if their previous betrayal and indifference had never occurred.
E qua il maestro Cerusico Abra.
Giovanni De Medici lay on his sickbed, pale of face, yet he maintained his noble demeanor. The doctors were helpless in the face of Giovanni De Medici's injuries. In that era, when human medicine was still in its dark ages, a compound fracture combined with infection from gunpowder was essentially a death sentence. The doctors attempted various methods, even using leeches to draw blood, but to no avail.
È inutile. Le mignatte si rifiutano di succhiare. Per ben 2 volte si è voluto provare. E questo è il segno che il sangue si va guastando. Per via del guasto che si è formato nella ferita, e non porti il percosso a infettare il resto del corpo, non resta altro che tor via la gamba.
Finally, they reached a cruel conclusion. To save his life, his leg had to be amputated. The surgery took place in that stark room. There were no anesthetics, no sterile environment. It was an excruciatingly brutal operation. The sound of the saw cutting through bone was piercingly loud in the silent room. Giovanni De Medici gritted his teeth, sweat soaking the sheets, yet he never once let out a scream. However, fate did not show him mercy for his fortitude. Although the surgery removed part of the necrotic limb, the infection had already penetrated deep into the marrow. In his final moments, Giovanni De Medici descended into delirium. His thoughts drifted back to his distant home, back to the side of his wife and child. He had dreamed of returning home to reunite with them after the war, of watching his son grow into a man. But now, all of this had become an impossible wish.
Vi prego, leggetemi qualcosa.
He asked his subordinates to read to him, not from the Bible, but treatises on war and politics. He recalled the words of Machiavelli, "The loyalty of mercenaries will not endure." In early December 1526, Giovanni de' Medici passed away in Mantua at the age of only 28. His death marked the end of an era. With his departure, the last stumbling block preventing the German advance south was removed. Although Georg von Frundsberg was forced by severe illness to relinquish command and return home, that vast imperial army did not halt its march. The Black Bands, leaderless without Giovanni de' Medici, could no longer organize any effective resistance. The German army advanced as if unopposed, crossing the Po River in full force, burning, killing, and looting their way straight to Rome. Barely 5 months later, in May of 1527, the sack of Rome, which shocked all of Europe, erupted. All of this tragedy seemed to begin on that cold winter night, starting with the cannonball that shattered Giovanni de' Medici's knee. It is often said that new weapons change warfare, but the story of Giovanni de' Medici teaches us that what truly changes the world is never the weapon itself, but the greed and betrayal in the human heart. Giovanni de' Medici, through his short and heroic life, placed a bloody period at the end of that bygone era of chivalry. He finally laid down his heavy black armor, finding a long-lost peace in the kingdom of heaven he so desired. There is no betrayal, no conspiracy, and no terrifying artillery, only eternal glory and rest.